We're approaching the finish line here for the StarCraft 2 World Championship Series Group B Challenger Americas. I've run out of things to say. I'm Nathanius, and I'm joined by In Control, whose gracious presence has afforded us a possible 45-minute first map, and I'm very excited about that. How are you doing, Jeff?
Always good. Always good. Got 2 legs, 2 arms.
Can't complain?
Yeah.
Well,
and,
could complain, but we
got
won't.
StarCraft.
The StarCraft is all we need. We got Terran versus Zerg coming up. Yep. Always a fun matchup. Good bit of variety. We had a bit of madness. This series that we'll be looking at has been interesting. Right, yeah, we had that first match. Drunkenboi definitely brought a lot to the table. I think the key element was like kind of a bit of like running out of steam type thing. And then that game 3, like he just went out on creep, which we hadn't really seen him do in the first 2 games at all. He was very patient, very methodical, and then just kind of crumbled. So we'll see if he can pull off the upset here in the rematch. We do not have our lobby up yet, so we're just waiting to hear from the players, and we'll be getting into this one very soon. Very excited. It's going to be starting on Cyberforce, looks like.
Yeah. And it's the final match of the day, no matter what.
Yes.
Go no further than this. Drunkenboi JonSnow did do battle, went to game 3, but it was kind of a funny series because game 2 was a 45-minute banger. Ended up with like 40 ghosts at one point in time doing battle with that whole thing. That was really cool.
Yeah, it was like 40 ghosts versus like 14 broodlords, 15 infestors, some vipers, a bunch of banelings. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
We went the distance.
Yeah, and then game 3 was anticlimactic. Just ended very quickly.
Yep.
And it kind of seems to be what you get with Drunkenboi. He's got really high highs and really low lows. But in this final match, if he could pull off this upset and get the revenge, which is like WCS tradition, is just the player that knocks someone into the lower bracket sometimes lives to regret that as that guy comes back and does battle with him. But it's unlikely. JonSnow is the better player, so we'll see.
As we will. We have the lobby set up. We'll be jumping into this one in just a moment, I suppose. Ready check is commencing, and the countdown should be starting any second now. So JonSnow is the player that has kind of been someone we keep talking about him because he does keep qualifying and he does keep winning in Challenger, and he's a face that people are starting to remember, recognize a little bit more. So for him, this is like a must-win. He's got to do like, for him to stay on the path that he wants to be on for his trajectory. He's got to win this match. For Drunkenboi, this would be like a cool upset. He showed the potential in that first series. Like I think this is totally winnable for him, but yeah, it's fun stakes here for our final match of Group B. We are loaded in. This is the World Championship Series. In the bottom right, we have the red Terran player. He is Drunkenboi.
Take it away.
He faces off against our blue Zerg player in the northwest. He is JonSnow from Psystorm Gaming. There's a lot of gamers over in Psystorm.
I like his little icon. The like detailed Hydralisk head there. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's a neat one.
The graphic work you can see in StarCraft these days is ridiculous. I love it. You can dress up the banners. You can have this. There's sprays. We've had some laughs with that earlier as well.
There's a lot of fun stuff in there, you know?
Yeah. It's talked about for years, and it's cool to see it developed into the game.
Yeah, it's a good. I think it's such a good thing for like even just giving yourself a little bit of like a mental break where you're like, oh yes, this is a game. This is very stressful and very difficult, and you know it's the most competitive 1 versus 1 thing you'll probably ever do in your life. But there's still some fun to be had.
Yeah.
Some shenanigans to be reveled in.
Okay, so a bit of a different opening here from JonSnow. It is the hatch after pool. Pool is finishing here, and he is mining gas, and was earlier. So normally I talk about this as like an anti-cheese type of opening, but I'm not entirely sure. I think he might be the cheeser. The hunter becomes the hunted.
Yeah, we'll have to see. The SCV Scout, which I always love to see from Terrans. I think it's just smart to do it. There's so many things that you can just write off as far as like potential threats go. Knowing when the hatchery is coming out, seeing that it's a pull first is important. He's not going to send his Reaper straight across the map. Unless he, of course, can still see the Lings with his Reaper, then or the SCV, then he would try to kill the Lings. But what I'm trying to say is he's not going to have his natural expansion canceled by Zerglings he doesn't know about.
Right.
Just kind of like jumping the gun here. So he sees that the Ling's backed off the SCV. He's going to swing around the side and actually find the 2 Lings that wanted to poke that command center. Says nope. And it's a good little grab.
Yeah, it's 2 of them. As you can see, can run them down absolutely. They get led slightly astray, so they can just kind of delay the timing of the Reaper a little bit. But as we can see on the map, there's nothing developing there. So Bunker is queued up for Drunkenboi. He's going to place this pretty cautiously. Play it cautiously, excuse me.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, you got to be a little bit cautious, right? You don't know how many Lings are coming up before that. You do know it was pool first because you SCV scouted. You're very aware of that. And the threat of speed finishing up and your Reaper getting grabbed is very real. There are still only 2 Lings, though, so he hasn't built anything else to use now that speed is done. So this Reaper can do a little bit of poking and prodding. I think if he micros it, should be able to handle the Lings. It's close. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. I actually did not know, and now I know that the 1 Reaper can kill 2 Speedlings like that. You need to micro it.
You need a micro. The grenade, of course, helps a lot too. If he's able to hit both Lings with the grenade, then it's even easier. But
I was talking about cheese from JonSnow, but not the case. He's just going to 3 bases, has speed behind this. Lings are just kind of fanning out. They're mostly losing their duels to that 1 Reaper, which is nice for Drunkenboi, of course. But otherwise, it was more of, I guess, an anti-something.
Yep, so Hellions are going to come out for Drunkenboi. His starport's done. What we've seen from him so far today, as far as his Terran versus Zerg opener, pretty uniform. Reactor Hellion, got every game. Followed up with the Viking, but he hasn't done any. We haven't seen Banshees. We haven't seen a Fast Liberator. We have seen the Hellion drop follow-up. But outside of that, it's been very, very standard, schmandered. Nothing really crazy. 3rd Command Center, double engineering bay. There we go. There's 3rd Command Center. And straight to bio as well. We haven't seen him bust out any of the more recent like fad builds like Battlecruiser Rush, no Cyclones. So it's just been straight up Marine tank from him as well. Very low on things like Marauders or Widow Mines.
Yeah, which is interesting because general philosophy in StarCraft is that you need to be mixing up what you do in best ofs, and even in a repeat match like this, to just do the same thing means you run the risk of running into hard counters and your opponent kind of changing things up in reply to that. But Drunkenboi is going the kind of straight and narrow approach too, where it's like he's not doing something super weird, he's doing the kind of catch-all normal stuff.
Yeah. You know what? We say this, and I was kind of hoping to jinx myself. He is mixing it up as soon as we finish our thought process about him doing the same thing. So he's getting a Liberator. He starts 2 factories. I love being wrong sometimes, Jeff. It wasn't.
Well, it's inevitable.
It wasn't just a joke. It's nice. We do get a little bit of a shake-up from him. We'll see what he can do. Of course, the early Hellbat attack is something that you kind of expect out of this. 1-1 starts up for ranged for JonSnow, which is also interesting. I wonder if he saw something that made him feel that way, because it's been Hellion openers the whole way so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually kind of curious, because he's been going for Ling upgrades with his Hydro Ling Bane, but focusing on the ranged upgrades. And now Roach speed. Maybe he was planning on doing a Roach timing this whole time.
Yeah, he might have, which will just line up really nicely with what he's facing, actually.
Yeah.
So far, I've seen no bio, but the Overlord that would have spotted that got pushed off by a Viking, which is, as you point out, been going on anyway, so that's not what tipped him off.
Yeah. He hasn't seen, I checked his vision, he hadn't seen anything in that main base. Moves out the 3rd Command Center very quickly, too. It can be hard to take that base if you get any pressure put on you, so I kind of like that he's taking the initiative here. If he can establish that and plant himself down on it so that it's not so easy to unseat him, then that could be really nice. We do have the first couple of Roaches being made. 5 is your defensive Roach number, but Roach speed's getting there, 1-1's getting there. And if he doesn't have tanks, a big Roach swell can be really devastating to a mech player in this phase, but oh my goodness, there is nothing to defend the drones at this 3rd. 7 of them immediately picked off, and the Roaches are going to come fight now, but as long as he doesn't just like sack all the Hellions here for no reason, that was a great grab for Drunkenboi.
Yeah, not bad. And of course, the jig is up here now, right? Like, he knows it's mech. He hasn't seen anything else. And it's interesting, too, because we've been talking a lot about Drunkenboi's pace. Like, the way he plays is very fast, very harass-oriented. And certainly with Hellions and Battle Mech style, if he does go that way, which it kind of, well, he's got tanks coming out here. He can't go that route.
I think he's scared of the Roaches.
Okay. What I was going to say, though, is that it's a very different change of pace for him. He's not going to be able to harass in the same way with this, so this is a completely different Drunkenboi we're seeing for the first time.
Yeah, I definitely like the potential out of it. What's interesting about this, and I like that you point that out because I think this is a little bit indicative of that playstyle comment that you just made, is he's actually cranking out some Liberators with this too. So he doesn't want to just rely on like a ton of Cyclone Hellion to put pressure on, but he's like, no, I'm just going to crank out Liberators, swing them around the side. I know he had 2 in production earlier. He's like, yeah, I'll just try to hit the bases while I do this and really stretch that defensive multitasking. Oh, at least gets a Queen first trouble and could. Oh, I was going to say picking off that one would be nice, but now he gets to kill drones.
That positioning is amazing. Like, from over there, the Queens don't have the range to fight that without being in the circle, so you're going to have to go all the way around, which just delays the mining that much more. And now kind of the fledgling battle mech, I'll call it. It's just the 2 Cyclones with this. Yeah. And behind this, it's mostly tanks. So it looks like it will get corralled, and that's going to be a pretty big loss, but because it's only 2 Cyclones, it could be worse.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Losing the Hellions here is not the end of the world. They're the expendable part of the mech army, and 2 Cyclones isn't super bad. I do really like that he got a few tanks. I think one of the big pitfalls that one of the traps that players fall into when they do this battle mech is you're like, yeah, I love it. I've got units here, units there. But for Zerg, there's a very real option to just say, hey, I'm going to crank out a ton of Ravagers, Roaches, and just go kill you. Which, by the way, that's what JonSnow's preparing to do. He's getting the Banelings in. Baneling speed's almost ready. +2 attack is almost done. Curiously starts the Hive. He's going to add a few more drones in here, but honestly, I feel like there is a window for him to get something done if he can grab one more little chunk of this army. Because honestly, like, this base isn't super crazy well defended, but he's doesn't have a crazy amount at home. That's the weakness of this, right? It's just his 3 tanks, really.
Yeah, it kind of looked like he was posturing for that. I think you're right. We'll see if he gets enough damage done on this army kind of marauding around the map. And it's getting corralled, so it should go down. At least the Cyclones, yeah, they're dead.
A few more tanks, I think, actually finished during this. Yeah, he got 3 more tanks, so...
Production on the tab. I mean, it's just units coming out, right? Overlord, so I think you're right, Nate.
I'm a little bit worried for JonSnow here, just because a few of these tanks are up on the high ground, too. Like, he's made the correct play, because in Modern Mech versus Zerg, you want to skip as many siege tanks as possible, and this is the army that basically says you must build tanks or you will die to this. But the tank count's pretty solid. The first one up front finally goes down. The Liberator sieges and Biles are forced to be used there, but the 2 tanks on the high ground are really pummeling away at this army, and he's killing so much drones on the backside with that Liberator.
He has fallen down over 20 workers behind of his opponent. The missed mining time, of course, making this even worse. And the Liberator still lives, so it delays even more mining time. It gets a couple of kills for itself. Maybe the Queen. If it kills the Queen, that's all the anti-air here. Nope, Queen's found a spot. But what a bad thing. He gets repelled from that attack, and like Nate pointed out, just a couple of tanks. He's going to go back to Swarm, or not back to, but he's going to go to Swarm Host, excuse me, as his kind of new answer. And usually that's scary with a huge backbone of Roach Ravager, but a lot of that got depleted, so it's kind of like just Swarm Host out here, actually.
Yeah, it's an interesting call. The thing about the Liberators that I really love is that it's also scouting. He should be able to see. Well, I mean, if he didn't know about the Hive before, he certainly knows now. But he should be able to see like 1 or 2 of those Swarm Hosts pop out from one of these eggs if he's a little bit lucky. And knowing that Swarm Hosts are coming is really important, because then you just go back into Cyclone Hellion, right? If you have enough of those units and you can kind of dance around on the map, you avoid this Locust wave. Because really, Locusts are strongest when they make their first attack unscouted. Yeah. Like when you're just chilling with your tanks and all of a sudden a bunch of Swarm Hosts drop on you and, you know, they all blow themselves up, that's when you're like, oh my god, I got caught off guard, everything's dead already, and it's really hard to recover. But not the case for Drunkenboi. And there's no creep spread either, so it just keeps the pressure on. It's going to be really hard for JonSnow to try and actually attack him with those Swarm Hosts.
I agree. And this Liberator backbone has been incredible. They're just constantly going out there, and he's actually doing a really good job of cycling their movement as well. They're not just dying all the time and just being forfeit once they get there. Now some Hellions hitting that 4th base as well. Kind of watching the kite back damage of this battle mech. But behind this, more drones are dying. Another 20 drone advantage here, and it's going to be more than that for our Terran player Drunkenboi.
Yeah, doing a really good job with this harass. So this style kind of suits him a little bit, which is nice to see. Not so fun is all the Swarm Hosts, Locust being able to land on that planetary, but they kind of land in a clump, and the Siege Tank's able to help get rid of those. The tank does die, but Could have been a lot worse. I really like, and I hope that we get to see transformation servos at some point as well, because that upgrade really helps. If you get the Hellions by the Locust, they'll two-shot them with it when they turn into Hellbats, so makes that whole process a bit easier. Also, non-stop Liberators just going across the map, while he takes bases as well. This mech player expanding very aggressively.
And then distracting with the battle mech, which requires Micro and his attention to fight. And then the Liberators get into those positions, and you can see the drone kills racking up on the left side of the screen again.
Yeah, really high APM play from Drunkenboi. And he's getting a lot done. He's getting so much done. These Liberators are devastating the economy of JonSnow. He's cranking out drones as fast as he can while building this army. But he's stuck below 50.
And now the Swarm hosts have to dislodge their Locust a little bit early. A piece of the battle mech's going to go over here and start to really work on the base itself. More drones dying. And it becomes, in my opinion, JonSnow has to just like win the game here. Otherwise, he's just going to die on virtue of being picked apart, basically. But the thing about Swarm hosts is they're really good at like attrition and overtime wins. Yeah, there it is. He's going to tap out. But they can't really deliver the kill blow unless they have an army at their back. The Locusts just die eventually.
Yeah. That first wave that came out of the Swarm hosts got like a cyclone, but that's fine. Like you get all the Locusts to drop in a random spot, because there's a world where, and I can see JonSnow's thought process. The Liberators really are what unhinged this for him. But like you get those tanks forced out because you're like, hey, I got a bunch of Ravagers, I've got Roaches and Banelings. Cyclone Hellion doesn't actually deal with like Roach, Ling, Bane like that very well, because you're locking onto Lings usually if you're not microing like a machine, basically. So you force out tanks. Swarm hosts are great versus tanks. The more tanks a Terran player has, the better Swarm hosts are, because the tanks just end up killing all of your own units, or they unsiege, and they still don't kill Locusts that fast. So being able to still get the jump on him in the open field with what few Hellions and Cyclones that he did have was just mega, mega clutch. Because at that point, he's like, all right, now I'm just going to start building Hellions. I'm totally fine. The first wave of Locusts did nothing, and I've got a 45-second or so window, whatever the cooldown is, to prepare for that next hit.
Yeah. And Drunkenboi showing that he's multifaceted at this point in time, because again, he played JonSnow earlier, a 3-game set, went the distance, never showed anything like that. I thought JonSnow, it was cool too, because you pointed this out during the game, but he saw something. He felt where he was going to hit his own timing, but Roach Ravager is a good response for that battle mech. That is the army comp you actually want. Going into Swarm Host is correct, but, and I think it was you that said this earlier as well, it's the execution of this mech that was really surprising. It was active out on the map, never really got up to like 10 Cyclones doing huge amounts of damage. It was more about those Liberators constantly going out there, and never having a huge queen count or any other anti-air meant that the bases were at the very least not mining, but very often losing 10, 15 drones.
Yeah, that was the coolest part, because we do not actually see that even at the highest level. We don't see a crazy amount of Liberators used with that build. Yeah. Oftentimes, a Terran player will get an extra factory or two because your units are cheaper than building siege tanks or Thors. So yeah, you can squeeze out more. But he expanded really aggressively, and just having the reactor starport, building Liberators the whole time he's doing battle mech, and just saying, yeah, go to this base, go to that base. And you're like, well, shouldn't he have queens or spores? And he's like, he was playing really fast. He repositioned, moved, adjusted, and that's also a great call out as well. Killing those queens means he can't inject the hatcheries that often. He can't spread the creep. The creep wasn't spread at all that game.
It all started to kind of fall down, and that is why that style is being used by players that are traditionally not mech players too. We're seeing a lot of that. They're like, well, that's kind of fast-paced and requires a lot of micro, and if is executed at a high level, feels like Bio in a lot of ways, where it's a lot of trading, but it's trading to the atrophy of the Zerg player. And we saw that in live action here. So we're in game number 2 now on New Repugnancy. And JonSnow needs to strike back. I think him not advancing would be a big upset. Drunkenboi, like we've been saying, he's a guy that's been around that NA scene, but you guys have been watching WCS. You have not seen a whole lot of Drunkenboi, and it's because he's been, I don't know. We don't even know his story. That's the funny part. That's where we kind of miss Ruby, right? Like he would tell us that he's a student or working or something, but he's a young guy. He's very good, always ladders. And
Drunkenboi's a cool guy. I remember having interactions with him, but I think this might tell a decent bit of the story, as I barely even remember it. It was so long ago. This was like 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, and yeah, he was a scourge in the ladder. Like even coming into this WCS season, I was just like, oh wow, he's back, and it's cool to see. Because he was this same style. He was just a very fast-paced player, constantly tried to be aggressive in every way possible, busted out a fair amount of cheese, and I've been pretty impressed thus far with his play for like basically announcing himself on the stage here of WCS. He says, "No, I haven't cheesed once. I've got a pretty solid macro game that I want to do, but coming into the rematch with JonSnow and mixing it up the way that he has was, I think, an ace play." Yeah. I'm trying to imagine as well if he went double eBay and started 4 racks after that Hellbat or like Hellion Harass with the 1 Liberator. Maybe that Roach Ravager just kills him too, because he wouldn't have had, he probably wouldn't have had tanks.
We'll never know, because Drunkenboi was able to go for it the way he did and win as hard as he did. Now, the follow-up here, so far nothing really developing for Drunkenboi. It's always kind of these static normal openings. He has not proxied 1 single time. JonSnow on the flip side, excuse me, or flip hand, I suppose.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, you flip your hand every once in a while, why not? Is going to go with the hatch first, followed by the pool, so a little bit more of an economic opening. It went bad for the Lings last time. It's worth noting, too. A lot of times we talk about if you do pool first, it's not that big of a deal. That's okay, but if you also go speed, and you also churn out 4, 6, 8 Lings or so, but all 4 of them get gunned down by a Reaper mid-map and just don't do much, well, that's kind of bad. That does kind of cost you a little bit. JonSnow's not so good that he can do anything and beat Drunkenboi. It's been made apparent.
Yeah. So we have the Reaper coming out to do that little bit of harass, and one of the other things I really like that Drunkenboi's done is he's been SCV scouting a lot. And the side benefit in Terran versus Zerg of SCV scouting is if you want, you can put that SCV on patrol by a 3rd base. So the Reaper goes to the other 3rd. He knows the 3rd base timing, at least somewhat. You want to try and keep a drone from going out there to take that base with the Reaper. JonSnow's in a position where he can just take that base, though, because he can see that the Reaper's in his main, obviously, but it's a little bit of a delay. And just having that sort of control over the pace of the game is always very nice. Until Ling Speed's done, JonSnow can't do a whole lot about that Reaper.
Yeah, very thorough play from Drunkenboi. Actually checked the main just to make sure it's not a lair, because a lair at that time would absolutely be a Nidus, which is something, again, we haven't seen a whole lot from our Zerg player. Almost said Zerg players, but there's only been 1 today.
Yeah, it does feel... I get the same vibe as you, though. It feels like the Nidus shenanigans have started to slow down a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Speed will finish up, so the time for this Reaper is dead.
Yeah.
Not be able to win that fight. No way, no how.
I feel like the biggest thing was just the fact that like the workers can kind of damage it now. Like just being able to add in that bit of DPS from pulling SCVs or drones, what have you, with a few smaller units like Marines actually being able to hurt the building worm now has kind of made it a less attractive option. It's a lot easier to shut down.
Yeah, and even in its heyday, I say, which is funny, it's like a month ago, but at the prime of the Nidus meta, it did get you some auto wins, but we also saw very good players get some auto losses. Like as Terrans kind of adjusted and even Protoss players found ways to really shut it down. No, the Nidus itself is not so mega expensive that there's just no way you can economically recover, but it was more like you were putting so much into that attack. It was all the queens were on hand, you were just making roaches or whatever. And then if it got shut down, you're like, well, I guess I'm on the other side of the map and queens don't participate, so the attack's just dead.
Yep. And we've had some funny games. I think one of my favorite Nidus games to watch was the one where there was the 1 battle cruiser, the BC rush, and then like 30 SCVs. It's like, yes, you entered my base. Of course I have 30 SCVs to repair. No, you're never going to kill this battle cruiser.
I'm just loving that we're seeing more battle cruiser. It's like it doesn't always hit a home run, but it's being used and it's being experimented with.
It's been added to the pool of Terran builds versus Zerg.
And Protoss, man, I'm seeing them too. I don't think they're as good in that matchup, but sometimes they're surprising.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I feel like versus Protoss, it grossly heavily depends on the opening that Protoss does. Because obviously on a lot of these maps, you could just tuck it behind the main if they have like stalkers or something, and you're fine. But we got roaches moving out. Drunkenboi's going mech again. Armory's on the way. More factories, more Vespene geysers. His 3rd command center's almost done. Not a crazy amount of drones for JonSnow, but he is going to pepper in a few behind this. He doesn't have roach speed, so there's really only so much that he can do once the siege tank comes out. But there's a bunker here as well, and the Liberator siege, so should be fine.
Yeah, he is. And I think the cool thing here is that JonSnow is never investing into this. This was 10-ish roaches or so. They're meant to incur a huge reaction. They didn't get the huge reaction. I think the natural stage of Drunkenboi there meant that, like you had pointed out, the tank and the Liberator, he was always going to be fine. Still a good check, though, right? It's game 2 in this potential best of 3, and, well, it is a best of 3, but 3 games, I suppose. Still want him to be aware of the fact that you could go into aggression.
And he's even making an adjustment here. We talked about Liberators all game last game, but he's going to get Cloak and he's going to get a Banshee. So Magfield Accelerator boots up, but he's thinking about having a little bit more sustained DPS for anti-ground. And who knows, maybe we'll see like Hyperflight Rotors. I think that'd be cool. He could always go back into Liberators out of this, but
yeah,
I like that he is starting to show us a few different looks. And he's gone into tanks even faster. He's not even going to go out. He didn't even build any Cyclones yet. He actually canceled Magfield Accelerator to start Blue Flame because he's just like, oh yeah, I think you're going to do another big Roach or Roach-Ling Bane attack. And that's really all JonSnow could do. So he's either going to do that or Drunkenboi's fine. Either way.
And also this map's really good for defending with tanks. That third base is not far off. There's a cliff that's semi-relevant as well for the high ground for those tanks. Very powerful.
Oh my god. Really good play. Gets 4 drones, a couple of Lings, that Liberator. I'm already feeling it too, because the Liberators did so much last game. I immediately believe in him that these Liberators are going to be a huge thorn in his side all game long. I even love he's got like a patrolling Viking outside the main. He's like, well, I cleared the map of Overlords, but if you do want to send more out, I have something that can, you know, just immediately push you back. And this is just him being annoying in general.
Interesting, okay.
He's sending the Ravagers around the long way to get the Liberator.
Felt like they could have got the shot elsewhere, but okay. Does dislodge it.
Job done.
Fairly even though, and I would not be shocked if we didn't see some Swarm Hosts here come in fairly soon. He is going towards Hive, so that would be the check back against what I just said, I suppose.
And this is the ace move here. He's going to show his hand with the Banshees, to be able to get a good few drone kills. And of course, the other side benefit to Banshees is, unlike the Liberators, the Ravagers are really bad against them. So trying to make a play with just like Roach Ravager as the Banshee count increases just becomes exponentially worse. You just have so much. These Banshees have absolutely ravaged that mineral line.
What a great play. And he's busting this out on the fly. He didn't do this in any of the other series.
Yeah, no, this is sick. He comes in the rematch basically saying, yeah, I've reinvented myself in a span of, well, I guess it was like 3 hours, right, since his last match against JonSnow, but...
And now you need to beat this next thing that I'm showing you.
Yeah. Because he played such discipline, like very basic, like Marine tank, nothing crazy, right? We thought the Hellion drop was the wackiest thing he was going to do. Well, he's showing us a whole lot of range today. I love it.
There's Magfield again, by the way.
Yeah, so now that he feels comfortable that he's not going to get killed by Mass Roach, it's like, all right, stop building tanks. I'm good. The less tanks that you can get away with building in TvZ with mech, the better. Oh my goodness. He's going straight to, wow, that's a pretty early fusion core, second starport as well. I thought he was going to double down on Banshees, but I guess his move is to go into ranged Liberators, all I can guess.
Which I love, given how effective he was last game. Sure, let's do it again.
Yeah, Banshee hits that base. Hellions hit the south base. Just constant pressure. More drones roasted and toasted. Mind you, still kind of impressive. He's got his Hive up. He's got Vipers out. Yeah. So he has the tools necessary to deal with a lot of Cyclone Hellion if he can get good at ducts and such and so forth. But I'm kind of... He's got a bunch of command centers being added. I'm interested to see, he's just going to go straight to Liberator range, or are we going to have like some gnarly battle cruiser shenanigans? I want to believe, but no, it's Reactor. Okay, he's going to go range Liberators. There we go.
Which has seemed to suit him.
It's very good. It's funny to think he got so much damage done over the course of the last map without range for his Liberators.
Yeah.
Now it just becomes painful.
Scary. And he does have the 3 Banshees. I'm going to keep my eye on that production tab. I don't see him adding more, but the 3 Banshees actually add some pretty silly punch to this, because it's not often that with the Roach Ravager, Queens are out there with it as well. The Spire is finishing up, so there should be things like Corruptors and stuff like that, maybe Vipers. But for now, 3 Banshees, pack a wallop. If you want to take that fight over on the Terran sides of the map, sure, your Ravager will all die.
Yep. Banshees are really great for that specific purpose as well. And he's going to get an early building armor. Oh my goodness.
Is he your kind of guy?
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I love it. It's just one of those upgrades that's just really good. It's not like it's like when someone asks, like, oh, you got like a new watch. It's like, does it change your life? I'm like, no, it's just nice, right? I don't know.
And now, it's less the battle mech. We do see the Cyclones, but the Hellions are being used for harass. and it's a slow push down the middle. And I kind of like this, actually. Like, there's so much here, and it's such a congested middle area that fighting this is really hard from the Zerg perspective. So slow pushing to that middle base, and then from there, sieging the bases to, you know, end the game. Very strong move.
Yeah. He's stepping out over towards this area. Now there's creep here. He's got to be careful of the Vipers. Of course, all they want to do is just abduct the heck out of those Cyclones. I like this. He just deposits the Marines. He's like, well, these were for a different period of time. Wow, okay, stops the army. That gets a bit tricky. So, loses a lot of Cyclones. The Banshee's going for a counterattack, and they will be able to rip apart this Spore Crawler, and probably this hatchery.
Kind of interesting, the Vipers end up actually exhausting all of their energy. So, as long as he's paying attention, the Banshees can probably get out of here.
Yeah. Keep in mind, he's got Liberator range now, so those are going to be a factor too. Oh my goodness. That's not what you want. Could have got that hatch, but oh well. His army can still try to make a play on the south side, but JonSnow is going to be returning shortly.
Yeah.
It's really the only vulnerable point at the moment.
How big of a deal is it that the Terran is on equal base to the Zerg? Is that as devastating as it is in other matchups?
Yeah, it's huge.
It's bad.
I think as a Zerg player, you're generally going to want to be a base or two ahead. If you're playing like an efficient comp with like Swarm Hosts or something where you're not really trading resources, you're just kind of trading the cooldown, then it's a little bit less painful because you should be able to have more of a bank than you typically would. But stuff like that's just really, really nice. Like just getting these picks, and this is the nightmare because he has Corruptors, but I have a feeling we're not going to see him stop using Liberators just because of that. Because in the last game, it seemed like, yeah, he had Spores, he had Queens, didn't matter. He was just so active with the Liberators, he forced a situation where he could use them. This is always very scary, though. Big Abduct's going to pull so many of the Cyclones into this army.
Even so, though, there's a bit of a concave here. The Hellions doing such massive work to the Hydras. And I do think that this Terran army will eventually get rocked back forth, but it's again a trade, as you pointed out, and now JonSnow up a little bit in supply, but down 17 workers. He's just at 61 between his 5 bases. It's nowhere near enough.
Like, hey, you sent your Corruptors across the map. Cool story, bro. 19 drones, DED.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So you have a few options in this position. My opinion is that the Cyclone Hellion on its own doesn't scale very well as both players approach max supply with like ground armies, especially because of the Vipers as we've seen. But he's going to add a bunch of starports. More Liberators are not bad. It seems like he's going to get a few Vikings and like pre-prep for Broodlords. Broodlords are not coming. But, well, he has the Greater Spire, but he hasn't started any Broodlords yet. And with just the 12 Corruptors, I don't feel like he's in a good position to do it. But I would like to see Thors. Again, is the point I'm trying to get towards. The Thors are really tanky. Like 400 health. They two-shot the Hydralisks. They actually two-shot Ravagers. And with their single target range, they can actually kill Vipers before they're in cast range for Abduct. But this push seems a little odd to me without the Vipers, because the tanks, there are still tanks at home, and they're going to be great versus this.
9 Broodlords queued up behind this. So that's great. And it is at the same time as the Vikings here, funny enough. But to your point, that was a really weird push. Like, he didn't need to free up supply. He's not mega maxed out with this huge bank. It felt just kind of like a sloppy, that's going on while I'm dealing with the Liberators, I suppose?
These Liberators, again, by the way, insane. He's been so persistent with the Liberators. Absolutely disgusting. JonSnow has no bank. He's not maxed. He's going to have those Broodlords.
And there will be Vikings.
This will be one of the 3 or 4 times in my career that I'm going to say the Vikings should be able to get the job done here against the Broodlords.
You really don't like them, huh?
Thors are better in every imaginable way. But yeah.
Cyclone's still kind of dominating the ground force, though. The ground force has dwindled to just about nothing. And the Broodlords are revealed. They're revealed on the wrong side of the map now, so they're going to clean up these Cyclones, and that's something, I suppose. Yeah. But even more drones are dying.
I want to believe that Drunkenboi is trying to trade out some supplies so that he can build Thors. But he gets the hatcheries there for the Cyclones. Okay, he's just going to stick with the Cyclones. It's not bad to do Cyclones with the economy that he has, because JonSnow can't really replenish. Like, he can brute force through those Broodlords with just Viking Cyclone.
Yeah. I mean, the Corruptors don't even exist. I think, do they?
Where are the Vipers? The Parasitic Bomb is like, that's your trump card.
This might be it, man.
But
But he's losing the Vipers too. 2 go down immediately. There's still that many Vikings. Here come the Corruptors.
Yeah.
They're dead. The Viper is going to try to run away. There's some Hydras. They might push this back for now. But now it's a 50 supply advance for Drunkenboi, and this would be one of the bigger upsets we've seen in a while. But if you watch the games, it doesn't even feel like an upset. Drunkenboi's been in control in game 1 the entire time. Game 2, he's dominating.
So clean. Yeah, so you're right. He looks like a completely different player coming into this second.
He played like a different player.
Yeah, he played completely differently.
And he's pushing. He says, well, hang on. I've killed a couple of hatches. The Liberators have done all that. That might be some kind of weird. He just did a 5 scan of the mid-map.
Yeah. If you got it, flaunt it. What is he sitting at? These 6 orbital commands. Not too shabby.
Bottom right being remade. That's the 4th base, guys. That's how bad this is. He's remaking the 4th base. He doesn't even have the money for a 5th base.
Fungal on the Vikings, though. They are very vulnerable. They're all going to get caught out and die here.
Yep.
What is interesting, and I do like this, is JonSnow actually has already thought about Thors. He's got Neural Parasite for his Infestors, which is one of the best ways to deal with those when they come out to fight those Broodlords. So he's already kind of prepared for that. His toolkit's there, but I still feel like Drunkenboi's economy, like he should be able to boulder his way through this.
Weird angle, though, and that is something this map provides. So getting around and fighting this army is tough. You can see some Vikings starting to kind of come out here and try and do it, avoiding the Fungals. But this battle mech style is just going to go shut down the backfield and pull back that slow-moving Zerg army, which was on a mission to kill that base, and it doesn't even do that, Nate. So it's just going to come back here to try and stop this, and it's going to get a pound of flesh.
Yeah. Cyclone lock-on, not affected by Blinding Cloud. But I kind of like this, right? He's got so much money, it doesn't matter. Like, push through, kill bases, kill tech, sure, kill some army, and then just replenish and rebuild. Oh boy, I like what he's rebuilding this time, though.
And it gives him time. Like, he was not in position to fight those Broodlords, actually. The Cyclones don't come over there and win that fight or anything like that, so he needed time. If you look at just, like, the tax, did he kill that much? No, not really, but he won space.
He's building BCs, Jeff.
Yeah. Neural Parasite, though, right? Is that a pretty good answer?
It can be. The Infestor count is not crazy high. Battlecruisers have a really weird interaction with Infestors, depending on the way that he controls it. Since JonSnow doesn't really have a giant army, it's not like he's got a flock of Corruptors to kill them, even if he doesn't parasite them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Neural Parasites, you can at best drag them towards like the Hydras or Infested Terrans maybe, but that would be all his energy. He doesn't even actually have that many Infestors either.
No.
It's not some kind of 30 where you think he always has a chance.
There's 2 good ways to deal with Battlecruisers for Zerg. First is you can use the Neural Parasite and teleport them into like Corruptors or Spore Crawlers, and then you burn their cooldown so they can't run away. You can also try to go for the Fungal if you have a lot of Infestors, and Infested Terrans, obliterate them. Infested Terrans dumpster Battlecruisers crazy hard. But you need the Fungal because it keeps them from teleporting. So there's a couple different ways to do it. But I feel like especially in a game where there's a low economy and the Zerg can't just throw stuff at those big capital ships, they're going to ride the struggle bus for a while.
Look at this, Nate. There's some land Vikings, maybe. No.
That
just pulls the whole army back by doing that.
Yeah, interesting maneuver. Oh my god, if he just catches the Infestors here, it would be huge.
Oh, or the Broodlords. The Broodlords are by themselves. They're so slow.
Oh my god.
The Vikings are coming to mid-map. He knows it. Locks onto the new hatch, sure. And this is a distraction Karn effect. He's like, yeah, you're going to kill my Cyclones.
The Zergs in the chat are super tilted.
Oh, wait.
Oh my god, he catches the Vikings.
That's amazing. Actually, an amazing little mid-map hunt there.
Battlecruisers are heading over. Do not have tactical jump. Or excuse me, do not have Yamato. It's just now finishing. So the other funny thing about Battlecruisers is when they use their Yamato on Infestors, or when they use their Yamato in general, it can't be canceled by Neural Parasite. So if you click to Yamato, the closest Infestor to you, and the Infestor tries to Neural Parasite you,
he'll still go off.
You'll still finish the Yamato and kill the Infestor. But they can actually queue tactical jump while you're doing that. It's very weird. But yeah, there's like a whole weird, delicate thing between them. But the Infestors have no energy, so he should be able to just Yamato and teleport out.
You shot one of the ones that had the most too.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, another BC just shows up. What's up, bro? Yeah.
Yep, does exactly that. So this base will get canceled. JonSnow's fighting back, but he's just doing this whole time at 40 workers, and there's more dying. Guys, there's more workers dying. The Valkyries just didn't teleport to safety. They teleport to kill.
Well, when you're so rich and so far ahead that you can throw battlecruisers at your opponent, it makes me a little nervous. because he doesn't have a bank anymore. He's still very far ahead in supply, but yep. And
Okay.
just got to pause from JonSnow. Hopefully everything is all right. And we will jump back into the game as soon as we know what is going on, and we can get things underway.
Poor
Okay.
JonSnow. He says there's a fire alarm going off at the land that he's at.
Well, that's okay. Well, hopefully everything's okay and gets resolved in a timely manner. Hopefully there's not actually a fire happening. That would be terrible.
No, I'll tell you, the kind of, as a side, a former pro gamer here myself, one of the stresses of performing on these stages is that, for instance, JonSnow is playing from a LAN that he was competing at, not his normal setup. And that's his own choosing, it's his own doing, so I get that. But there's things like fire alarms going off, the building is closing at some point or times, had to kind of negotiate that, like, and it can kind of add up. A lot of guys handle it really well and they can just travel, they're like, oh, this is not my normal height, but it's fine. And that's a big part of this. But then there's other players, and I can say this because he was a very successful player despite this, but Huck, for instance, like, had a really tough time with different setups. So a lot of times when he had to go into a booth or something like that, you need to give the guy like half an hour to an hour to really get comfortable with what he's going to do. But he would also take that time because he knew if he didn't and it disturbed him and he lost, it's not like people would be like, well, Huck was traveling, it's fine. They'd be like,
no,
Huck sucks now. I can't believe this. He's a terrible player. You know, so it's a lot of stress for a pro gamer.
People aren't held to the standard of their circumstances. They are held to their standards, period.
Yeah.
But been a fun game, fun match. We're just basically waiting to hear an update. Hope whenever everything gets sorted out. And yeah, but good second day of WCS. It's been
great games.
Yeah.
I was joking about the length of the broadcast, and it certainly has been one of our longest ever. But hanging out with you guys has been great.
Yeah, we might be there. It's just about 4:20 over here in Los Angeles, so. Yeah.
Yeah, we got here at 6, been casting since 7, so it's 9 hours of commentary and 10 hours of being here. That's a long day. That's early dream hack.
My favorite part about whenever we finish one of these shows is going to be, again, because we've been trapped in a dark dungeon, is when we step outside and we're done, and the bright, blaring sun is like, sup, it's 5 o'clock. Sun's not going down for a few more hours. It feels like it's been a whole day, but you're not there. It does seem like we're just going to take a quick break, and when the players are ready to go, we'll come back and give you the conclusion of this match. So we'll be right back. You're watching the StarCraft 2 World Championship Series. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the StarCraft 2 World Championship Series Challenger America Edition. We have an update for you. So it turns out the building that they are playing the match from for JonSnow has been evacuated, and they're going to be closing everything down. So just so you guys are aware, the match is going to be resumed offline when both players are available to play, probably some point tonight or tomorrow. We'll be providing any further updates. You'll be able to check the StarCraft Esports Twitter, and I'm sure we'll all be posting about it when we know further information about what is going on. Of course, we can't control what happens. JonSnow is safe. Seems at least fine. So we will just let you guys know. We're going to take a look at our schedule so you can see what our future upcoming stuff is going to be. These were today's matches. We did have Estrella make it out of the group, knocking JonSnow, of course, to our final match, where he is currently down 0-1 to Drunkenboi, and map 2 will be resumed when both players are available to play that match out. Yeah, so just apologies for that. We can't control when that type of stuff happens. Obviously, we prioritize the safety of anybody if something like that is going on. Yeah,
I mean, things happen. This is certainly a first, and it's weird, but I like that they're pausing and they're honoring that, and they will play it out. And the results, of course, it would be lovely to have on stream, but it just simply can't happen. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So we don't really have a time frame for that. So we are done here for today. Like we said, please stay up to date on StarCraft social media channels, and all that information will be available. We are going to be resuming WCS Challenger next weekend. We'll see you guys Saturday, bright and early. Have a great day, and thank you for hanging out with us.